Wake up. Get to work. Wake up. Get to work. Wake up. Get to work. Get to work.
Wake up! Hey. Last spring, I took a bold step and I quit my trendy desk job in the city and then moved out to a property in nature, the property where my grandpa grew up. To the rational side of any brain, I don't think this decision makes much sense, but it really wasn't the rational part of my brain that made the choice. It was my heart and soul that just yearned to be in nature. And as crazy as this idea initially seemed to my then 23-year-old brain, I actually ended up doing it. It is officially spring again, nearly April, and the snow is starting to melt, which means that I've completed one full trip around the sun out here. So today I'm making this video and I'm gonna go over why I decided to initially move out here, how I did it, and then also what life is like now and how it's been. I'm excited to walk you through the thought process behind one of the objectively weirdest decisions of my life, which has led to one of the best years of my life. Let's go. Do not impale me. I decided I'm gonna find a variety of logs to sit on for this video. That'll keep everything spicy. So why did I move out here? I recognize it is not ordinary behavior for a 20-something-year-old guy with a cool job in the tech industry, living in the city, born and raised in the city, to quit everything and then move to a farmhouse that is 30 minutes from the nearest gas station. I recognize that's strange. To make sure that this video isn't very, very long, I'm going to give a SparkNotes version of what happened. It all starts for me with my chosen career path. So out of high school, I went into marketing and sales. Initially, I thought this was a great spot for me. And I was going to school, cruising along with my degree, and suddenly COVID hits and I get sent back online. I was chipping away slowly at my degree during this time. I never fully went back to in-person despite trying. And in late 2022, early 2023, my family went through what I would call some significant hiccups. And I decided, okay, this semester I'm going to take a step back, take a full-time school semester, just all online, and prioritize my mental health, slow down life for a bit. Right after the ad drop date for classes, I got contacted by a business owner I knew who basically offered me my dream job. The conditions for this job, though, were I had to start right now, it couldn't be delayed, and it was full-time work. I decided to accept the offer because working in industry would give me way better experience than I was actually getting from school, and not to mention, I would be getting paid, which is not something that school was offering me. So I ended up doing a full-time school semester with what ended up being a more than full-time job. Looking back now, I can recognize that part of me accepting this job on top of school was likely a coping mechanism to kind of just jam-pack my schedule and not have to think as intently about what was going on with my family at the time. But I worked hard as hell for 4 months. Every single day I was just on. And I ended up burning out really badly, but I didn't realize that at the time, and I just kept pushing. To accommodate my crazy busy schedule, I had a very strict morning routine. I got pretty accustomed to this routine, and I'm not joking you when I say that I ate oatmeal for breakfast every single day for over a year. I fully can't look at oatmeal the same way now. Part of this structure as well was that because I was working and I didn't have time to do excess things like, for example, making lunch was a big commitment that I just often didn't have time for. I gave myself the concession to go out for lunch every single day. And just to put it on with the same weird, rigid structure I had, I ended up going to the same Vietnamese place I found about 5 minutes from my work and ordering almost the same bowl of vermicelli every single day. I'm mentioning this Vietnamese restaurant because it becomes relevant very soon. Now, the work that I'm doing isn't particularly fulfilling for me. There are jobs that pop into mind when I think of a fulfilling role, like, for example, maybe nursing. Nursing is one, where you are working really hard, but the output of that work is very fulfilling. And marketing and sales just doesn't have that. The whole point, in fact, is to manipulate people into buying things. So it just doesn't have that same fulfillment factor as many other jobs. So when I'm working really hard and I'm not getting that fulfillment. I didn't realize initially that that would be taxing on me, but it ended up being very soul-sucking. I didn't know at that time that I needed to resonate with my job on a moral level, but I've come to realize that I absolutely do. This might be a good time to mention as well that throughout my teenage years and early adulthood, I struggled with addiction. And I still struggle with addiction. My brain doesn't just change. But as I sought treatment for that, my values really shifted as I sobered up. And in sobriety now, I have very different values than I did back when I first went into a marketing route. Back then, I didn't really care if I had to manipulate someone or pull strings to get a certain outcome. In fact, I enjoyed that part of it, that rush. And now I just don't. I really value integrity and honesty, and I have learned to have empathy. And this is just so different from the person that initially went down this sales path. My sobriety from my addictive patterns is also probably why I was able to channel a difficult family situation into a positive coping mechanism, being scheduling myself and overworking rather than a very negative coping mechanism like I've done previously. So anyways, I am working this job hard and I'm not getting much back at all beyond the paycheck. And I find myself trying any excuse I can to justify taking a 4-hour trip each direction to the property where I'm at right now. Because in this time, I found that I really loved going out in the woods and exploring and foraging for mushrooms and this kind of aspect of connecting with nature. I didn't know that was something I loved so much, but as I found that, I found that it was addicting. I even needed it to stay sane during this time. I would drive after work on Friday, 4 hours, and then I would go out in the woods all day Saturday, and then the morning of Sunday, and then I would drive home Sunday afternoon. So I was really driving 8 hours just to get one good day in the woods, which is insane, but I was doing it almost every weekend. I slowly began feeling like I was living two separate lives. One where I get to go live this adventurous feeling, exciting life, and go explore in the woods. And then coming back to the city and sitting down at a desk and working a soul-sucking job where I didn't feel fulfilled and in many times felt morally conflicted. Eventually, maybe naturally, I got the crazy idea of, hey, you're driving an 8-hour round trip every weekend. What if you just lived out here? The rational side of my brain immediately shot down this idea. Why would I quit my comfortable desk job and move out to a place I have never lived before, have barely explored, going away from the security of a paycheck, just for, I don't know, like a hobby or something I like to do? I wrote off the idea and said, no, this doesn't make any sense. But once inside of my brain, the idea really started to fester. I would wake up just trying to make it to Friday so that I could go be in a car for 8 hours for the weekend so that I could get a little bit of time out in the woods. And I know there's closer woods to explore, but this was the place I wanted to be. One day, I went out for lunch at the Vietnamese restaurant I mentioned earlier, and something really strange happened. I was approached by someone who I did not know very well. It was the owner of the Vietnamese restaurant. We had said several words to each other in passing when I was paying for a meal, but I didn't know their name. It turns out their name is Vince, and Vince came up to me and said something I really could have never expected, and I still think about all the time. Vince comes up unprovoked, out of the blue, and says, "Hey, I get the feeling that you have too much on your plate right now. Maybe you need to slow down." We then proceeded to have a 10-minute conversation about a proper, healthy work-life balance. I promise you, I was not looking sadly into my bowl of soup, longingly, as though I was overwhelmed. I was just looking how I normally look. I was just eating the food. Vince just had this gut feeling, this intuition that he acted on. And I've since pressed him about this moment, a great deal of time later, and he said it's just felt like what he needed to say. Needless to say, this had a major impact on me. This was a fork in the road moment where it felt like all the fog had finally cleared and I could clearly see what the right avenue was. After running it by some of my mentors, I decided that, yeah, this is something I want to do. Additionally, I volunteered with a environmental restoration group out in this area. And at one of our meetings after I had made up my mind that I was going to come and live out here in the spring, I mentioned that I wanted and intended to move. A representative from the parent organization that runs the working group I was a part of almost immediately reached out and said, "Hey, if you're moving out here, would you want to work with us?" I didn't know then, but this has actually ended up being my dream job. And it's something I never would have encountered had I not made the, objectively unintelligent decision to quit my stable job. So after some necessary logistics and planning, I did it, and I quit my job and moved out here to an old farmhouse. And I recognize that I am very lucky to have an old farmhouse and this property in my family and have this option to come connect with nature. But when I got here, I had a ton of cleanup to do on this old neglected house, and I started getting really accustomed and in tune with the major events of the seasons. Frequently, I would hear a strange sound in the woods and be like, "What is that?" And then I would end up going on an hours-long exploration mission to figure it out. The wood frog mating season was especially confusing. Oh, maybe the most uncomfy log choice yet. Oh, okay. That was why I was getting impaled. So there are lots of big differences between living here and in the city, but here are some of the main ones I've noticed. I'm not getting constantly bombarded by billboards and lights and noise. It feels like this lets me keep in the present moment a whole lot better and slow down my pace of life. And on that same note of slower pace of life, it feels like people out here are a lot more willing to take a second out of their day and chat and get to know you. It feels like I've gotten to know my neighbors better here, all of whom live over a kilometer away, better than I knew my neighbors in the city, even though we lived right next to each other. Little things have started to become novel again. Small things like taking a trip into town is now a whole ordeal that I get excited for because it's something that I don't get to do every day. It's also helped me to realize what it is that I actually need versus want, because the prospect of going into town means it's going to be a big chunk of my day. So if I don't actually need something, then I'm not going to go for it. As someone who loves the outdoors, living out here has actually saved me a ton of time because I no longer have to trek to get closer to nature. I live in nature. I can just explore my backyard. And in that note, I've been able to connect with the animals out here like I never would have expected. I've gotten fairly well acquainted with the beavers in the front yard pond and with the porcupine in the neighboring trees, the squirrels and the birds. I have gotten to know them all. Speaking of which, be careful around Jeffrey. He's a total douche. In summation, the weird choice to leave the comfort of the city and a paycheck ended up being one of the best decisions I could have ever made. It has been an amazing year out here, and I feel so blessed to be in this space. I've actually decided to stay for another year and continue exploring, and I don't know that I'll ever go back to the city in the same way that I was before. I don't know that I could ever live in a city again, having experienced what this has to offer. Anyways, it worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you too, but you'll never know unless you try. So follow your friggin' dreams. See ya.